Hello Ignition Radio listeners and welcome to Airtime of the Geek. It's Monday bank holiday and it's 1 p.m. GMT if you're listening live via our website or via TuneIn. If you're listening to the 1 a.m. repeat, it's 5 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Central and 8 p.m. Eastern. If you're catching up on YouTube, then please like and subscribe to this video and our channel. Comments, queries, suggestions, you can follow me on Twitter at Airtime Geek. You can follow me on Instagram at Airtime of the Geek. Windows Phone has direct messaging now. You can email me, Paula B, at ignitionradio.co.uk. Or you can call the studio. The number's 01642 645 827. You can also take a look at geeky art I upload to DeviantArt. My username there is Airtime Geek, and I have just set up a Facebook page. You can find me on there. It's facebook.com/Airtime of the Geek. It's the 2nd of May, which means Game of Thrones Season 6 Episode 2 aired last night, and we're going to be recapping it later in the show. For now, let's do the geek news. Of course, Civil War came out on Friday, and I went to see it. I'll be talking about it later as well. But bad news, that Punisher series is now back on. I literally couldn't be any more unenthusiastic about it, considering Punisher has contributed to my lethargy of actually watching Daredevil Season 2 almost completely. Mads Mikkelsen said in an interview that he misses Hannibal just as much as the rest of us do. Long live Hannigram. There was an article on the Mary Sue this week by Carolyn Cox, and I'm going to quote it almost in whole because it's something I think that's fairly important we discuss. And it's to do with an article that came out on Screen Crush. Here is the article. As reported by Screen Crush on Friday, the first trailer for the new Ghostbusters film is now the most disliked movie trailer in the history of YouTube. Currently at 591,618 dislikes. The trailer is far more disliked even than the trailer for Josh Trank's Fantastic Four film, 20,175 dislikes, or Adam Sandler's critically reviled Ridiculous 6, 5,803 dislikes. In some respects, it's not surprising that the Ghostbusters trailer would receive a disproportionate backlash compared to those other films. A significant, or at least the very disproportionate, vocal group of the Ghostbusters fan base was introduced to the franchise in their childhood and therefore have an emotional investment in the movie that viewers for the Ridiculous 6, for example, perhaps do not. The trailer's characteristics of Patty was also controversial, which might account at least for some of the dislikes, but it's not just the number of dislikes the Ghostbusters trailer has that's notable, it's the ratio of views to dislikes. Based off a ranking of YouTube's 100 most disliked videos, Screen Crush reports that Ghostbusters, the only film on the trailer list, received 4 times the amount of dislikes per view than most disliked videos on YouTube. So while some dislikes is understandable given the amount of nostalgia associated with the franchise, the ratio of dislikes to views is surprising when compared to other videos, although maybe not too surprising when you actually look at the comments section. Like the majority of other videos on YouTube's most disliked list, the high number of dislikes arguably has less to do with the video's quality than its focus on women. 59% of the 100 most disliked videos are female-led, which tells me with regards to Ghostbusters trailer specifically, it is the number of people accusing the film of pandering to women or complaining that it's sexist not to have a male Ghostbuster. What's with all the exclusion? Isn't having only one gender kind of unfair? That's pretty much how women feel looking at all media all the time. Men who have accused Ghostbusters of pandering to feminists either don't recognise or don't care that they themselves have enjoyed the media pandering to them their whole lives. The original Ghostbusters movies pandered too, but because they pandered to men, it didn't seem to inspire such vitriolic criticism. Since Screen Crush's article came out, the trailer's comment section has been filled with people urging each other to get the trailer's dislikes to 1 million. That's fine with me. People are fine to waste their time however they choose. What's less important to me personally than the number of dislikes is the very telling rhetoric being displayed over and over by the movie's critics. Men are vehemently defending Ghostbusters, a franchise based on pandering to men, but basing their arguments against the new film on the grounds that it panders to women. They are called for the gender parity in the new Ghostbusters, but throw tantrums when Star Wars follows 6 male-driven movies with 2 female-centred ones. If you don't think that Ghostbusters Backlash is based on misogyny, yet you question why all the female leads, you wouldn't think twice about an all-male cast, wake the hell up. Your dislike for this film may be influenced by far more than your unexamined biases than it is by the trailer's actual quality. If, like me, you agree wholly with this article, then please go to themarysue.com. We'll provide the link in the video description. Please spread it to your friends, especially those who have been disparaging the new Ghostbusters film. The link is themarysue.com/ghostbusters-most-disliked-trailer. So, I have a little shout out. Maldudemaker on Twitter wanted me to know that he thought The Walking Dead finale was BS too. I passed the message on to my dad. I'm glad we're all in agreement. Remember, if you have any comments on the show, there's lots of ways to write in. You can do so by Twitter, email, Instagram. You can call in the studio. You can visit me on Facebook. You can visit me on DeviantArt. I'm all over the place. Now it's time for this week's top 10. And for this week's top 10, we are counting down my top 10 James Bond movies. Bond was all over the scale since his beginnings, and he is probably the most harmless, that is, the most heroic impersonation was during the Moore era, and that is saying a lot. Bond has never been above killing people when they were unarmed, down at his mercy, or with their backs turned. Brosnan-era Bond even did so with a playful smirk, and had more than once been playing dirty while doing so. The films also show Bond taking pleasure in killing his opponents when it is personal for him, as seen with From Russia with Love and For Your Eyes Only. Now, this list, if anyone was going to question, a little spoiler before I actually do the top 10, there's no Sean Connery, and if anyone wonders why, this is why.
An interview in which you said, it's not the worst thing to slap a woman now and then. As I remember, you said you don't do it with a clenched fist, it's better to do it with an open hand. Yeah, remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I didn't love that.
I haven't changed my opinion.
You haven't?
No, not at all.
You think it's good to slap a woman?
No, I don't think it's good.
You don't think it's bad?
I don't think it's that bad. I think that it depends entirely on the circumstances and if it merits it. Yeah.
What would merit it?
Well, if you have tried everything else, and women are pretty good at this, they can't leave it alone. They want to have the last word, and you give them the last word, but they're not happy with the last word. They want to say it again, and get into a really provocative situation. Then I think it's absolutely right.
There you go. From his own mouth, Sean Connery is a confessed woman beater. So, starting with my top 10 of the countdown of the best James Bond movies is The World Is Not Enough. This is the one where Denise Richards plays a nuclear physicist. In Pierce Brosnan's third James Bond outing, Bond is assigned to watch over once kidnapped daughter of a Ruritanical oil baron after he dies securing money for her release. Renard, the anarchist, is quickly deduced to be the likely culprit. MI6 tried to assassinate him, but before you can't keep a good terrorist down, it only resulted in lodging a bullet in Renard's brain, which is slowly killing him as it moves inwards, but is also destroying all of his senses. Renard can't smell or taste anything, and crucially, he can't feel pain. Meanwhile, 4 rival oil pipelines are being built across Eurasia. The Mogul's daughter, Electra King, owns the British pipeline and is everyone's favourite heiress, meaning that Bond needs to protect her, though something just doesn't add up with her plans. This movie features Bond jumping out of a window, Bond driving a speedboat out of the MI6 building, the Q we know and loved retires, a rather good ski chase, M playing an integral part of the plot, a first for the series, the franchise's first and so far only female big bad, Bond shoots a woman in cold blood, a rarity, a horrible pun for one of the Bond girls. When the real MI6 learned that the film would shoot a scene around their headquarters, they moved to prohibit it, citing it as a security risk. However, Foreign Secretary at the time, Robin Cook, urged a Member of Parliament, Janet Anderson, and moved to overrule them, allowing the shoot, stating, "After all Bond has done for Britain, it is the least that we can do for Bond." Desmond Llewellyn, famous for playing Q, died in an automobile accident soon after the movie opened. Llewellyn had said just before his death he was planning to appear in the next Bond film. This movie's release was dedicated to Llewellyn and features a tribute montage of his appearances in the 17 Bond films over 36 years. The film's title, The World Is Not Enough, is a translation of the Latin motto, Orbis non sufficit, given to George Lazenby's Bond when he researches his own coat of arms in the 1969 movie On Her Majesty's Secret Service. Number 9 is The Man with the Golden Gun. This is the one with the gun that happens to be made of gold, which is terrible material to actually make a gun out of. Also, Christopher Lee drives a flying car. The Man with the Golden Gun is the 9th spy film in the James Bond series and the second to star Roger Moore as the MI6 agent James Bond. A loose adaptation of Ian Fleming's novel of the same name, the film has Bond sent after the Solex agitator, device that can harness the power of the sun, while facing the assassin Francisco Scaramanga, Christopher Lee. The Man with the Golden Gun, the action culminates in a duel between them that settles the fate of Solex. This was the first James Bond movie allowed to be screened in the Kremlin, where a Russian officer told Cubby Broccoli that the KGB clearly didn't train Scaramanga very well, possibly because there is only one mention of them in the entire movie. Red China, on the other hand, it's also the last film that Harry Saltzman worked on. The Man with the Golden Gun was the 13th and final complete James Bond novel written by Ian Fleming. It was the first and only one of his full James Bond movies to be published posthumously. Some sources claim that it was unfinished at the time of his death, whereas other experts such as Andrew Lycett and John Cork maintain that Fleming had completed it before he died. It is of controversial debate as to whether Fleming wrote the novel himself completely or whether others were involved. Fleming's own personal correspondence from the period indicates that he had in fact completed the novel and submitted it to publisher before his death. The correspondence also indicates that Fleming was not pleased with the novel and was considering retiring from writing Bond novels because he feared he'd lost his edge. The title role was initially offered to Jack Palance before it eventually went to Christopher Lee, who was the cousin of Ian Fleming, who was to be known as the Man with the Golden Pen. Fleming had previously offered Lee the title role in Dr. No, the first James Bond movie. During World War II, Christopher Lee worked for RAF Intelligence and the SAS. He never publicly talked about what he did during the war. However, whilst filming a scene for Lord of the Rings, Peter Jackson described to Lee how Saruman would be stabbed by Wormtongue and what kind of sounds he should make. Lee replied with telling him, "That's not the sound a man makes when you stab him in the lungs," which is pretty terrifying. Number 8 is The Spy Who Loved Me. The film takes its title from Ian Fleming's novel The Spy Who Loved Me, which was written much differently from other Bond books, and Fleming was so embarrassed by the results he would only sell the rights to the title, refusing to license the plot with it. The film's storyline involves a pair of nuclear missile submarines that go missing. Independently, our British Secret Service agent and a Soviet agent, Anya Amosova, are assigned to find them. The thing is, the former has just shot the last boyfriend dead. Nobody expected The Spy Who Loved Me to do well after the poorer performance of The Man with the Golden Gun. Its four main iconic moments were the teaser. At the end of the sequence, Bond skis off a cliff. He falls for several heart-stopping seconds, then a parachute opens in the colours of the Union Jack as the Bond theme kicks in. There were several reported cases of audiences breaking into applause at this moment. The stun was done for real, and you can actually see one of the skis hit the stuntman's chute, which could have been pretty nasty. The Lotus Esprit is also iconic. The moment it drives off the pier into the sea and it becomes a submarine. The 007 stage, built for the massive battle scene in a supertanker. It had been made available for filming for other movies and remains the second largest stage in the world. Note, it's actually a silent stage, not a sound stage, but the size of it makes it ideal for big action sequences, which almost always require doing the sound in post anyway. Jaws, Richard Keel, the 7'4" henchman with the metal teeth who is unstoppable, that he is the only dragon to survive fighting Bond, not counting Knick-Knack, and maybe one who came closest to actually scaring him. This is partially due to the fact that Bond knows no matter how hard he hits the giant, he will survive it and come back to challenge him again, and in fact does return for the next Bond movie, Moonraker. Speaking of that last point, the movie ends with James Bond will return in For Your Eyes Only. However, in 1977, that was the summer Star Wars was released, and every producer in the world wanted to have a space-themed hit to rival it. So instead they quickly scrambled together and made Moonraker, since it could support a space-themed plot. It helped that Moon was in the title. It also features the first appearance of a wet bike, the actual prototype, in a work of fiction before it was commercially launched. By the time the film was made, the Bond franchise was the most lucrative in the world, and many manufacturers wanted their products to feature. There was great competition for the company who would supply Bond's car. Don McLaughlin, the PR manager of Lotus, realised the best way to win this coveted position was to make the film's producers chase after him rather than go begging to them. One day he turned up at Pinewood Studios driving a brand new, unreleased Lotus Esprit with all identifying names covered up. He parked it outside the Bond set knowing the producers would see it when they came outside. And once the car had attracted a crowd, all clamouring to know what it was, McLaughlin nonchalantly got into the car and drove away without answering any questions. As he had expected, the producers were desperate to discover what the car was, and Albert Broccoli, better known as Cubby Broccoli, later chose it for the film. Number 7 on our continued countdown of the top 10 best James Bond movies is Skyfall, the one where James Bond implies he swings both ways. Skyfall is the 23rd film in the James Bond franchise, also marks the 50th anniversary of the film series, and the third to star Daniel Craig as Bond. After languishing for years in development hell following the financial problems of distributor MGM, the Sam Mendes-directed film finally saw release in 2012. An operation in Istanbul to recover an encrypted hard drive containing the identities of every active undercover NATO agent ends in disaster. Bond goes missing, with a top agent presumed dead and the information he sought sitting in the wrong hands. MI6 Section Chief M comes under government review for handling of the situation. But when a terrorist attacks MI6 headquarters, Bond returns to track down the man responsible, Raoul Silva, a dangerous cyber-terrorist with a personal grudge against M. A few days after the film debuted in Britain, the real MI6, the Secret Intelligence Service, SIS, took out a full-page advertisement in the Times and the Sunday Times, running with the headline, "If the qualities that make you a good spy were obvious, they wouldn't make a very good spy." The aim of the ad was to debunk the legend and mythology associated with film fiction spies like James Bond in Skyfall, saying that real-life spy work is not high-speed chases and shootouts, and an average spy is not a globe-trotting secret agent, and that psychological profiles of real-life agents show that they are actually far more ordinary. The ad also dismisses the white male spy stereotype, saying that the truth is we don't care what sex you are or where you're from as long as you're a British national. The humorous advertising campaign is considered one of MI6's most open ever recruitment drives, but in true espionage fashion, the ad still warns of the utmost secrecy and strict information confidentiality, advising potential candidates that they cannot disclose when they are making an application to anyone. Judi Dench played the role of M in this film at the age of 77. The performance is also Dench's 7th time playing M. This is Dench's largest ever on-screen role, playing the M character, and the most significant James Bond ever to explore a relationship between M and James Bond. Producer Barbara Broccoli said that the film explores this relationship perhaps more than any of the 22 previous films. She has said, "We wanted to really mind the relationship between Bond and M because it's the most significant relationship he's had in his life. M is the only person who represents authority to him. We have two extraordinary actors and we just thought, let's go all the way, and it worked extremely well. It was a very emotional story." The passport used by Daniel Craig was not actually created by the props department, but an authentic document issued by the British Home Office, according to producer Michael G. Wilson. Everything from the paper, print, photograph and jacket are entirely genuine on James Bond's official passport. However, as a security measure, the passport is encoded with information that would flag its inappropriate use in any official transaction. The actual details shown on Bond's passport in the film are as follows. Name, John Adam Bryce. Date of birth, 16th of December 1968. Sex male. Place of birth London. Date of issue, 22nd of June 2012. Ben Whishaw is the fourth actor to play Q in the official Bond series. This marks the first time that Q is actually younger than Bond. The producers had said when it came to trying to reintroduce the character of Q, it made sense that he would now be a young tech genius, and the character was written with that in mind. Wishaw's character of Q has been likened to that of computer genius types Jack Dorsey and Mark Zuckerberg. Coincidentally, Wishaw said that he doesn't even own a computer. Peter Verson first played Q under the character's real name of Major Boothroyd and nicknamed the Armourer in Dr. No. Then Desmond Llewellyn played Q in 17 Bond films between 1963 and 1999, followed by John Cleese as Q's assistant R in The World Is Not Enough, and then Q in Die Another Day. The latter showed the last time the character would appear in official capacity before Skyfall, a gap of about a decade. Wishaw is the sixth actor to play Q if one counts the unofficial Bond films Casino Royale and Never Say Never Again, where Q was played by Jeffrey Baldwin and Alex McCowan, respectively. Q is an abbreviation for the word quartermaster. Number 6 is Tomorrow Never Dies, the one where Bond beats up Rupert Murdoch. Tomorrow Never Dies is the 18th James Bond film from 1997 and starring Pierce Brosnan for the second time. The original title of the film was Tomorrow Never Lies, which makes sense when you consider media mogul Elliot Carver, played by Jonathan Pryce, High Sparrow, was creating the next day's headlines in advance, then causing those events to happen. But a typo in an early draft script was adopted by producers, and Tomorrow Never Dies was used instead. A British warship and Chinese aircraft are destroyed off the shore of China, an incident that threatens to ignite all-out war between the two countries. The British claim that their GPS locator showed they were in international waters, causing MI6 to suspect foul play. The clues point towards the Carver Media Group network, a worldwide media empire owned by Elliot Carver. James Bond is sent to investigate Carver and his organisation to find out if someone is engineering war for fun and profit. A task that sees him crossing paths with Chinese secret agent Wai Lin, played by the incomparable Michelle Yeoh. After the more introspective tone of GoldenEye, Tomorrow Never Dies eases back into the Connery-esque classic Bond formula, beat for beat, with one-liners galore, a large ham villain, and plenty of action set pieces that make full use of the theme music power-up trope. Brosnan begins to carve his niche as the playful Bond. So that was the Tomorrow Never Dies theme tune. Comments, queries, suggestions, you can follow me on Twitter at Airtime Geek or Instagram at Airtime of the Geek. You can email me, paulab@ignitionradio.co.uk, or you can call the studio. The number's 01642 645 827. You can also take a look at geeky art I upload to DeviantArt. And I have also just set up a Facebook page. It's facebook.com/Airtime of the Geek. On DeviantArt, I'm just Airtime Geek. I'll put all of the links in the comments section. So number 5 on our continued countdown of Heartfire Point is Moonraker, the one where Bond gets launched into space. Moonraker is the 11th James Bond film and the 4th starring Roger Moore. Bond is sent to investigate Drax Industries after one of their shuttles is hijacked mid-transit. Turns out it's all a part of an evil plan by billionaire Sir Hugo Drax, who, like Blofeld and Stromberg before him, is trying to tired of sharing the world, and with all these riffraff, and to remedy this, Drax plans to exterminate the population and replace it with ideal supermodel specimens. So much for champagne wishes and caviar dreams. The movie was blatantly made to cash in on the science fiction craze that Star Wars had started. How blatantly? The end credits of all the Bond movies always announced the title of the next series, and the previous movie said Bond would be back in For Your Eyes Only. Moonraker was made instead. Jaws returns as the only henchman to make a second appearance in the series, but his role was changed from vicious killer to wily coyote. Despite this, it is the highest grossing Bond until 1997 GoldenEye, adjusted for inflation. Thunderball remains the highest grossing Bond film. Critical reception was more mixed. Those who liked it tend to love it. Those who disliked it tend to hate it. It has a similar reputation among fans. Either it's Moore-era camp done right, or exacerbable mutilation of everything Bond. Still, the laser gun shown in the film and its infinite ammo can come in handy when you have to unlock it as a cheat in the N64 game GoldenEye. Notable for being the final Bond film to feature Bernard Lee as M, he died before production started on For Your Eyes Only. The cable that Jaws bites in it actually was made of licorice. Did you know that? Moonraker has 2 dictionary definitions. It is a synonym for moon sail, which is the highest sail of a ship. It's also a term from a Wiltshire folk story, where smugglers trying to hide contraband pretend to rake the water in a pond so as to catch the reflection of the moon. Sometimes it is used to also refer to a man of extreme ambition, which could apply to either Bond or Drax. Moonraker was the 3rd James Bond novel written by Ian Fleming. It was first published on 7th of April 1955. A number suggested of working titles exist for this novel. These include The Moonraker, Mondays Are Hell, The Moonraker Sense, The Infernal Machine, The Moonraker Secret, The Inhuman Element, Wide of the Mark, The Moonraker Plan, Hell is Here, Bond and the Moonraker Plot, Too Hot to Handle, the last being a retitle of a novel for its first US paperback release. Moreover, Christopher Wood novelisation of the film called Bond and Moonraker. Yes, there is a novelisation of a film that was based on a novel. Number 4 on our countdown of the top 10 James Bond films is Licence to Kill. The one where Bond goes on a roaring rampage of revenge. Note, also the first one not adapted from an Ian Fleming novel. It's the 16th Bond film, starring Timothy Dalton in his second and last appearance as 007. When escaped drug lord Franz Sanchez, Robert Davi, aka Al from Showgirls, brutally attacks Bond's old friend Felix Leiter on his wedding night and murders Leiter's wife. Bond starts a personal vendetta against Sanchez that requires him to become a rogue agent in the process. Dalton was signed to return to Bond a 3rd time, but legal issues, a lawsuit concerning television licensing rights sold off cheap by the new MGM owners to finance the purchase of MGM, without the approval of franchise co-owner, the Broccoli-Wilson family, coupled with the reluctance, if not right resistance, to the new MGM management in 1993 to see Dalton return once more, kept the series in a long-running hiatus until Dalton resigned in April 1994. Pierce Brosnan announced to be the new James Bond in July 1994, and GoldenEye came out in 95. In an interview during September 1988, Dalton denied media claims that his Bond was not allowed to have sex, much due to the AIDS epidemic at the time. However, in a 2007 interview, he admitted that this was in fact true. According to the documentary Inside Licence to Kill, a number of mishaps and strange occurrences took place while filming the final climatic tanker scene. The sequence was filmed on a dangerous La Rumorosa road, which had been closed down at the time of filming because of a number of fatal accidents occurring on the snake-like twists and turns. Amongst the mishaps involved the dummy rocket Sanchez Robert Davi uses to bring down Pam's plane. The rocket travelled 2.5 miles, striking and injuring a telephone worker. Upon investigation, it was determined that stretch of road they were filming on was where a van with 5 nuns crashed and fatally killed. Bizarre incidents continued. Timothy Dalton was nearly added to the list of tragedies when filming the scene after James Bond releases the tanker to blow up the tanker trucks at the bottom of the hill and jump into the semi. All vehicles were cleared from the area, but when Dalton came around the curve, a vehicle was in his path and he narrowly missed driving over the edge. If he had, Dalton would have likely been more seriously injured and possibly killed due to the height the hill the truck was on. Director John Glenn and others state that human figures would be seen standing around the fleet of Kenworth semis used for filming. When challenged by security guards, they would simply disappear. 2 semis caught fire for no apparent reason, and one started up and drove by itself a short distance before coming to a stop. However, the biggest, creepiest surprise occurred when filming the final trunker explosion, in which Bond sets Sanchez on fire and his flaming body ignites the tanker truck into a huge explosion. The scene went off without a hitch, with the still photographer shooting photos where the scene took place. Upon reviewing them, the still photographer found one contained what looked like a flaming hand. You can see this by doing a really quick Google image search. And it's like a hand coming out of the flames. 4 cameras were set up to record the final explosion, but after reviewing the footage, the only glimpse of the hand was found on the still photos. According to John Glenn, a copy was made for him, but his wife refused to allow it in the house. Number 3 on my continued countdown of the top 10 James Bond films is The Living Daylights, the one with Bond going all third man. Living Daylights is the 15th James Bond film and the first of 2 starring Timothy Dalton as the suave British agent. After a training exercise, Bond and the other 00 agents are involved in On Gibraltar Turns Deadly for 004 and a few SAS guards the agents were sparring against. Bond is given his next mission, assist in the defection of a highly ranked Soviet general named Georgy Koskov. When he visits the conservatoire in Bratislavska, Czechoslovakia, the defection works out, but Bond suspects something's amiss when the sniper sent to kill the defector was the pretty cellist performing at the conservatoire, who was clearly not a professional with a sniper rifle. Against orders, Bond merely wounds the woman before helping Koskov get over the border to Austria via one of Q's contraptions. Back in London, Koskov reveals that the new head of the KGB, General Pushkin, is starting up a new ruthless counterintelligence operation called Smert Puponin, Russian for death to spies. Koskov fears it will lead to retaliation from the British or Americans, possibly even lead to nuclear war. However, before further details can be gleaned from him, Koskov is snatched from the safe house he was being kept in, assumably by the KGB. Bond thinks there's more to the story than meets the eye, but M is convinced enough to order that Pushkin be killed while at a trade convention in the Tangiers, especially when 004's body is returned from Gibraltar, found note reading Schmerz Binum. I'm not sure if I'm even saving that right, to be honest with you, but I'm giving it my best go. Bond accepts the assassination order reluctantly, but decides there's enough time to investigate things in Bratislava, starting with that pretty cellist. This is one of the most complex Bond films with a few good twists along the way and a lot of great action scenes, as well as being one of the ones that feels somewhat like an actual spy movie, if clearly still a Bond film. Also noteworthy in this film, it is the last film to feature a blonde Bond girl, or if you're feeling punny, a blonde girl, in a lead role until Léa Seydoux as Madeleine Swan Inspector. Note, Die Another Day subverted this with Miranda Frost, who seems to be the Bond girl until it's revealed she's the mole. It's also the last to feature the Soviet Union as a major player. Note, the last Bond film before the dissolution of the Soviet Union was Licensed to Kill, but this takes place in the Americas and the USSR is not involved. The USSR makes its final Bond film appearance in GoldenEye with a brief prologue set 9 years before the main action of the film. It's the last to be based off a piece of Ian Fleming's original Bond fiction, in this case a short story, until Casino Royale in 2006 was made to reboot the franchise with Daniel Craig as Bond. Note, Licensed to Kill used elements of Bond novels including The Man with the Golden Gun, Casino Royale and Live and Let Die, but was largely an original story. And it's also the last to feature the legendary John Barry's music, as he retired from the series after this film. The only disadvantage of doing a James Bond list and using the theme tunes is some of them are really bad. So number 2 on my continued countdown of the top 10 James Bond films is Spectre. The one where James Bond finally gets to fight Spectre again. Spectre is the 24th in the James Bond franchise and the second film in a row to be made by the team who made Skyfall. The film was released on October the 26th, 2015 in the UK and November the 6th in the US. After being suspended for an unsanctioned hit in Mexico City, Bond discovers a cryptic message from his past that puts him on the trail of a sinister organisation. While New M battles political forces to keep the 00 program alive, Bond peels back the layers of deceit to reveal the terrible truth behind Spectre. Returning staff include director Sam Mendes, screenwriter Neil Purvis, Robert Wade and John Logan, with Hoyt van Hoytema joining the production team as a cinematographer. Returning cast includes Daniel Craig as James Bond, Ralph Fiennes as M, Naomi Harris as Moneypenny, Ben Winshaw as Q, Rory Kinnear as Bill Tanner, new cast members Christoph Waltz as Franz Obenhauser, Lea Seydoux as Madame Swan, Monica Bellucci as Lucia, and Dave Bautista as Mr. Hinks. It's also notable for finally having Bond sleep with an age-appropriate woman. Italian model and actress Monica Bellucci previously auditioned for a Bond girl role prior to being cast in Spectre. In a 1997 interview with Playboy, former James Bond actor Pierce Brosnan said that Bellucci had screen tested for one of the 2 leading Bond girl roles as Paris Carver in Tomorrow Never Dies. That part ended up being cast with American actress Terry Hatcher. Brosnan had said, Monica Bellucci is a ravishing beauty, a gorgeous, gorgeous woman. She screen tested to be a Bond girl a while back, and the Fools said no. Terry Hatcher stole the day instead. Since this film does not use an original Ian Fleming story title, there are still only 4 unused titles remaining. The Property of a Lady, The Hildebrand Rarity, Rarisco, and 007 in New York. The word Hildebrand does appear in the name Rarities shop of this film. The completely stunning Day of the Dead from the Spanish Dia de los Muertos festival, seen in the film's trailer and in the movie's opening sequence, is a real-life Mexican national holiday where all the banks are closed. The public holiday is particularly celebrated throughout Mexico, but also in other cultures across the globe. Elegant skulls, or La Caveira Catrinas, used in the Dead celebrations are artistic manifestations of altars and calavera costumes of the Day of the Dead. An image of one of these little skulls features in the background of one of the film's main movie posters. Nevertheless, there are no Day of the Dead parades in Mexico, as shown in the movie. The writers blended Brazil's carnival celebrations with the Dia de los Muertos Mexican tradition, 2 totally different events, but I would say well worth it because that opening sequence is lush. So my number 1 choice for my top 10 James Bond films is GoldenEye, the one with the tank chase. GoldenEye was the first James Bond film after a 6-year hiatus following License to Kill. The first mainly set in Russia, the first done after the end of the Cold War, and was the first to star, finally, Pierce Brosnan as 007. The film opens in 1986. Bond and his partner, Alex Trevelyan, played by Sean Bean, are dropped into a place I can't pronounce to take out an illicit weapons depot, but things get sticky when an alarm is tripped and Trevelyan is killed by the ruthless General Oramov in the melee. Cut to present day, where spies have traded in their Walther PPKs for pocket protectors, and MI6 is being retrofitted for the 21st century, with a bureaucracy to match. Bond's mission, should he choose to accept it, wrong franchise, is to investigate the reactivation of an old Soviet space weapon, the titular GoldenEye, which has fallen into the hands of some wily ex-Soviets, but little does he know that there is far more to this mission than meets the eye. He will be forced to face his past when it comes back to haunt him and shoot at him. The Bond girls for this go-round included Natalia Simonova, and a Russian programmer known more about the theft of GoldenEye than is healthy, and Xenia Onatop, played by Famke Janssen, a sadist who crumples men between her thighs. A quick note on the origin of the name. It's named after Fleming's house in Jamaica, Goldeneye, which is in turn named after Ian Fleming's, who was at the time in the British Naval Intelligence plan for maintaining control of Gibraltar in the event of fascist Spain entering World War II on the side of Nazi Germany, which is in turn named after Carson McCullers' novel Reflections in a Golden Eye. Bonus confusion, the fictional film Goldeneye should not be confused with the documentary film Goldeneye, which is about the aforementioned house in Jamaica, especially not if you're a British newspaper, giving away the latter on DVD bundled with the paper itself and supporting said offer with the TV advertising campaign. Daily Mail, it tends to get you shouted at by the ad advertising regulator. The previous 007 movie, License to Kill, was used as a contest advertising campaign to help generate interest for the film. The winner of the contest was promised a cameo role in the next James Bond film. Unfortunately, due to production work on GoldenEye, it didn't begin for many years. Nevertheless, the contest winner was given a scene after the long delay. She didn't have a speaking part, but you can see her in a lovely gold and black evening dress looking over on her top shoulder as she plays Baccarat against Bond. Agent 007 kills 47 people in this film, making this the highest amount of people James Bond has killed in a single film. At the time the script was being written, producers were under the assumption that Timothy Dalton would be renewing the role of Bond, and it was written to match Dalton's darker and more realistic portrayal of 007. The satellite dish at the end is the Arcabello radio telescope in Puerto Rico, which appears in the film Contact. It took about 10 minutes for the crew to walk from one end of the walkway of the periphery to the centre of the dish. That was my top 10. If you're catching up on YouTube, then please like and subscribe to this video and our channel. Comments, queries, suggestions, you can follow me on Twitter at Airtime Geek or Instagram at Airtime of the Geek. You can email me, it's paulab@ignitionradio.co.uk. You can call the studio, the number's 01642 645 827. You can also take a look at geeky artwork I upload to DeviantArt. You can look me up there and use the names Airtime Geek. I've also set up a Facebook page. It's facebook.com/Airtime of the Geek. I went to see Captain America Civil War on Friday, and as you know, here at Ignition Radio, we are Team Sexy Times. So, just so you know, I'm going to talk a little bit about it. There are going to be some very, very minor spoilers, and I'm going to refrain from plot spoilers and just stick to character ones. Nothing I say should ruin your overall enjoyment of the movie. So, obviously, first things first, if you stick around for the post-credits stinger, you will see the naked hot tub sexy times as promised. Or will you? I enjoyed Civil War very much. It didn't feel like a Cap movie like Winter Soldier and the First Avenger did. This felt very much like Avengers 2.5. The absence of Hulk and Thor aside, it was very much an Avengers movie. Cap was great, Tony was great, Spidey was adorable, I will relent on this. Black Panther was really cool, Black Widow kicked ass up and down and back again, Ant-Man was hilarious, Vision was adorable, Wanda was perfection. Baron Seymour, despite not having a pimp suit or the name Baron, was actually really good. I liked it, as I said, and I have no doubt it will make it into my top 10 list of the best movies from 2016 at the end of the year. However, I do have two complaints, and they're not huge ones. It's just something that they've been bothering me since I've said it, since I saw it. Number one is Steve was a dude bro for about 30 seconds, and it bugged the hell out of me. So, spoilers. Steve gets a phone call saying that Peggy's died from very, very old age and goes to a funeral, discovering Agent 13 from Winter Soldier is actually Peggy's niece. And then later in the movie, he kisses her whilst Bucky and Sam approve with some dude bro head nodding. It's just really out of character for Steve, a man who is very likely still a virgin, to kiss the niece of the love of his life days after carrying her coffin and showing off to his bros. Very, very out of character for Steve. Steve is a Boy Scout. Just, no. Bad Russo brothers. Bad. My second complaint is the two new characters were introduced to the Avengers lineup. This brings the current lineup to White guy, 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 robot white guy, black guy, black guy, black guy, lady, lady. I know there are rights issues to some characters and some characters of diversity will be coming later, but come on. 9 white guys, 3 black guys and 2 women. The comics are way more diverse than this. Captain Marvel's getting her own movie, so we have to wait for her. Fair enough. But Wasp was introduced in Ant-Man and she's one of the founding members of the Avengers, so why couldn't she be in it? Please, oh please, can Spider-Woman just exist already? I am so sick of waiting for Jessica Drew to appear. Spectrum, she's a twofer. She's a lady and she's a black lady. At one time she was a Captain Marvel, so can she please just be in the MCU? Ronin has been multiple people in the comics over the years. Hawkeye's used the identity. Maya Lopez, lady of colour who was also deaf. Blade even took up the mantle at one point, so you could literally put anyone in the Ronin suit and tick off a diversity box. Same goes for White Tiger. I could go on all day. Bloody hell, there are 5 Phase 3 movies before Infinity War, and I expect someone to get up off their arse and start introducing some more diverse characters. There are plenty in the comics. Please just pick a couple. And if you think that it's only guys who watch these movies, you're clearly not using the same internet that I am. Also, Martin Freeman was in the movie playing a character who could have played by literally anyone. And also he was playing an American, and he doesn't really do a very good American accent. There are millions of Americans in America. They could perhaps use one of them. So it is time for the Game of Thrones episode recap with episode 2, Home. Let's recap that. The things that have really stuck with me from last week are the unjust murder of Dr. Bashir and Old Lady Melisandre. So those are the plot points I'm most looking forward to seeing continued as of right now. The title sequence added Pike, so I'm already excited to see what's been happening there because it's been like 2 seasons since we've seen anything. We open, however, with crows flying around inside the Great Weirwood Tree, where Ming the Merciless and Bran are walking. They are overlooking a courtyard in Winterfell in what turns out to be a flashback. 2 young boys are practicing sword fighting. One of them is Ned Stark, the other is Benjen. They haven't forgot about him. Lyanna Stark comes riding in on a horse, and Bran can't resist going to take a closer look for just a moment. It appears, though, however, that the flashback ghosts can see Bran, but the camera turns round and it turns towards Willis, who is Hodor. But Hodor can talk in words that aren't Hodor, and my mind is blown. I'm actually not sure I can handle the idea of Hodor using actual words. Bran wants to stay longer in the memory, but the 3-eyed raven Ming says it's time they wake up, and one of the children of the forest is watching them. Bran isn't happy about being woken up, and neither am I, to be fair, because it was actually really interesting. However, Bran sees Hodor and asks him what happened. Hodor, of course, explains everything in a very complicated monologue, which I will quote exactly here. Hodor takes Bran outside to Mira, and she's unhappy about us being stuck under the tree. Can't say I blame her. It must be very boring watching someone else's spirit quest. Bran goes back inside, and one of the children of the forest talk to Mira and tell her that Bran will need her for when he leaves the tree. We go back to the wall where Thorne the traitor tells Davos Seaworth to come out. Everything is totes fine. They'll even let Ghost go. Ollie the little git is also there. Davos pulls out Jon's sword and the other men ready theirs. Thorne prepares to break down the door with a big hammer. And just as they break through, there is a thud at the doors of Castle Black. And Won the giant and the wildlings break into the courtyard. Thorne calls for an attack, but the men remain still. The one man who fires an arrow into Won gets picked up and thrown around like Loki does by Hulk, only this man is far squishier than Loki and goes splat. Thorne is pooing himself. The men drop their weapons except for Thorne and Ollie, and they are caught by the wildlings and thrown into the cells with the other traitors. The wildlings go to see Jon's body and prepare a wood for a fire. We now go to Flea Bottom, where peasants are talking about Queen Cersei walking along the streets naked. A man talks about Cersei admiring him during her walk of shame. Everyone rolls their eyes at him, and as he stumbles home drunk, the zombie mountain appears and smashes his head into a wall, and I literally couldn't stop giggling for about 5 minutes. I had to pause the episode while I giggled. Cersei, meanwhile, is pulling threads from her dress. The mountain zombie comes to collect her, and a bunch of Kingsmen appear and tell her that the king has asked Cersei to remain in the Red Keep for her own protection, not attending Myrcella's funeral. Reluctantly, Cersei stays, which I'm actually quite glad about because I don't want to see her getting caught again, and damn it, when did I start liking Cersei? We see Tommen and Jaime looking over Myrcella's body. She is wearing the stones that Trystane painted for her on her eyes. Tommen suspects that Cersei killed Trystane, which confirms that the boat must have been in King's Landing at the time he was murdered. Jaime gives him a bit of a lecture, but the poor kid has a lot of pressure on his head, feeling very guilty about not being able to protect his mother or Marjorie. The High Sparrow turns up. He's still a tool. Jaime threatens the Sparrow and for some reason passes up the chance to kill him. But to be fair, the Faith Militant turn up, all armed to the teeth, and the Sparrow talks about overthrowing an empire and then swans off. Tommen goes to see Cersei and apologises for keeping her locked up. He was just concerned for her and didn't want to lose her. This poor kid blames himself for everything and asks for Cersei's help. I'm fairly sure he's dying this season. I mean, I feel really, really sorry for this kid. The guy he thinks is his dad is dead. The guy who's actually his dad is his uncle. His sister is dead. His older brother is dead. His wife is locked up. It's just all gone to hell for him. Back in Marine, Varys Tyrion drinking, and they discuss what happened with the fleet. And Astapor and Yunkai have returned control to the slavers. The dragons beneath the keep have not eaten since Dany left. He says they'll have to free them and decides they're going to go feed the dragons. Literally, for the first time in the show, I'm actually wanting away from dragons and wanting to find out what's happened on the wall, but I stick with it. Tyrion sees the dragons and they're really unhappy that their mummy isn't there. They've also grown. He tells them he's friends with their mummy and asks them not to eat him. He tells them that he always wanted a dragon when he was a boy, even if it was a little dragon like him. Tyrion gets to touch one of the dragons and gets very emotional about it and frees one of them. And then the other, and I think the other's Viserion, it's really hard to tell, there's not much light and I'm colourblind, then allows Tyrion to free him and the other two dragons wander off and Tyrion takes off sharpish. Varys is well impressed by this and Tyrion tells him the next time he has an idea like that to punch him in the face. I think a little bit of poo might have come out. In the streets of Braavos, the obnoxious girl turns up to beat Arya up again. They fight briefly with sticks, then Jaqen turns up and tells Arya if she says her name, he'll let her back into the house of black and white. He'll feed her, he'll give her back her eyes. Arya declines it all, and Jaqen allows her to return with him. In Winterfell, Roose is told all Ramsay's best hunters have been killed by one of the Karstarks. Not killed by one of the Karstarks, but he's told by one of the Karstarks that they've all been killed. Ramsay proposes storming the Castle Black and killing Jon Snow. Too late, Ramsay. Roose tells his son quite sensibly that killing the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch would unite all the northern houses against them. But Ramsay argues they only need the Mandalays, the Umbers, and the Karstarks. Does this mean Great John Umber is actually following the Boltons? Flaming hell. The Maester comes in and tells Roose that Walder has given birth to a healthy baby boy. And Ramsay gives his dad a hug, and I think that we can all agree Ramsay has a crazy look in his face then. Oh my God! Ramsay kills Roose. Ramsay pulls a red wedding on his own dad. I am actually shocked that Ramsay did that. Ramsay is a complete and utter nutbag in ways that Joffrey never even could dream of, but I never thought he'd be that stupid. He tells the Maester to send ravens to all the northern houses and tell them Roose has been poisoned by his enemies, and then tells him to send for Lady Walder and the baby. Oh Lord, they're actually going to do it. We're going to see another baby death. Ramsay asks Walder if he can hold the baby, and she lets him. All this time I'm screaming, run, take your baby and run. Ramsay then takes her to the dogs, and I don't think I just need to describe what happens next when Ramsay takes Walder and her baby into the dog kennels. And to be honest, I really don't think that the show actually needed to show it. I mean, they didn't show Stannis being beheaded, which everyone wanted to see, and then they show it's bad. This is like one of the controversial moments of the season, I think. So So in the forest, Theon grabs firewood and Brienne tells Sansa when she last saw Arya. She asks Sansa what happened at Winterfell, and Sansa regrets not going with Brienne when she had the chance. Theon fears going to Castle Black. He doesn't want to take the Black, and he feels he has to atone for his crimes. He decides he's not coming to the Wall with Sansa. He's going back to the Iron Islands. Cue the Iron Islands. Yara tells her father that they've lost Deepwood Motte and their invasion has failed. They argue, and I think Yara is planning more patricide for this episode. Greyjoy then goes along a rickety wooden bridge and in a storm comes across his brother Euron, and I only know this because of what other people have spoken about prior to the episode airing. Euron is blatantly cray-cray. He kills his older brother and tosses him off a bridge. We see Balon's funeral and they send his body off in a big lobster pot to be eaten by the fishes. Old straggly grey hair man has been recast to an actor what I know from Velvet Goldmine, and there's to be a king's moot. Back at the Wall, we see Melisandre, who's young again. Davos comes to see her. She looks really sad. So Davos asks her if she can bring Jon Snow back. She says it shouldn't be possible and she's really depressed, and Davos actually has to give her a pep talk because Melisandre admits that the Lord of Light has never talked to her. It was all a lie. Melisandre goes to wash Jon's body. She seems unsure of herself but cleans him up. She clips off bits of his hair, burns it in the flames of a pyre, also trims his beard and recites words, cleaning his hair with water. There's only a little bit of cloth covering Kit Harington's modesty. Melisandre's spell casting becomes more desperate and it really doesn't look like it's happening, kids. Jon Snow is defo dead and everyone leaves except for Sir Davos, who takes one last look at Jon's body, then leaves, leaving him and Ghost alone. And then of course Jon Snow wakes up. I mean, did anyone even doubt that Jon Snow was not coming back to life? High points for this week were definitely the stuff on the Iron Islands, everything happening at the Wall, Bran's flashback, the mountain zombie smashing the guy's head in, and Ramsay killing Roose Bolton. Low points were everything involving Walder and her baby. I just could have done without it, to be honest. Questions still rattling around in my mind. What will Dawn do now that House Martell has lost all its heirs? Will Walder Frey the Old get murdered by Ramsay in this season too? Can the mountain zombie just kill the High Sparrow? Is Tyrion going to become a dragon rider? Is something good ever going to happen to Arya? There will be more Game of Thrones next week. The promo for the next episode could actually be something that confirms R plus L equals J, confirms or denies it. Either way, it could be happening. That's it this time for Airtime of the Geek. Tune in next week for more top 10s, news and reviews. You can send comments, queries, suggestions. If you follow me on Twitter, it's at Airtime Geek, or Instagram, it's at Airtime of the Geek. You could email me, paulaB@ignitionradio.co.uk. You can call the studio, the numbers 01642 645 827. Look me up on DeviantArt. My username is Airtime Geek. Our Facebook page is facebook.com/Airtime of the Geek. That's everything from me, and I hope you have a great bank holiday afternoon.